Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about popular culture in the 1920s and 30s. And culture is just the way that people kind of do things, they go about, sort of like American culture. We have the Super Bowl, we have the 4th of July, people dress differently. And we're just going to talk about culture during this time. And one thing that started happening around the 1920s and 30s is called modernism. And modernism in the 1920s marked the beginning of a period that rejected conventional ways of viewing, interacting with the world. So people started doing new things, not old things. So it used to be everybody was Christian. A lot of people no longer, during this time, didn't believe in Christianity. They started believing in science. And even things like women used to always stay at home, they didn't work, they just took care of kids, but now they start going to work. And modernism was reflected in art, architecture, which is buildings, literature, music, entertainment, such as movies and radio, and fashion. And just the big thing with modernism is you have to remember people started doing new things. They weren't doing things the way it used to be done. They started doing new things. Just like you guys probably do new things today, like Snapchat, that your parents don't do. People do new things and they stop doing old things. This is really the first time mass media and communication became popular. The radio was very, very big during this time. And some of the things that the radio did is it broadcasted jazz music. If you guys want, you can go to YouTube, Google jazz music, you can see what it is. There was also entertainment programming, so there'd be things like people read books, they'd have plays, and it's a little different than radio. There's no, you can't see anything, you're just listening. The other thing is sporting events, especially baseball was very popular during this time. And there was something called fireside chats, and that's when Franklin Delano Roosevelt, which this is Franklin Roosevelt over here, he was the president of the United States. He would go on the radio and defend his rationale for the New Deal program. So the New Deal was things that kind of gave American jobs, and he would go on the radio and he would talk about why he did it. We're going to learn a lot more about the New Deal probably next class. But fireside chats, that's just what they would call it, because families would gather around the fire, they'd listen to the radio, and they'd listen to what the president was saying. Movies also became very popular during this time, and it provided an escape from Depression-era realities. And Depression, when we say that, it doesn't mean people are really sad, though there were a lot of sad people. In this case, the United States in the 1930s had a very big depression, which means there was no money. A lot of people in the United States in the 1930s lost their jobs. They had money in the bank, and a lot of banks closed, so they literally had no money. Things were very bad. So some people would go to the movies just so they can forget about the depression. And we're going to learn a lot more about the depression as well. And this is an example of movies people would watch. And it's about 3 minutes long. It's kind of funny. This is an actor named Charlie Chaplin. And during this time, there was no sound. Sound came a few years later, probably came in the mid-1930s. But in the 1920s, when you watched a movie, sometimes there was music, but there was no talking yet. And this actor was very famous. And here's his scene. So that's what his videos or his movies were. Some movies were comedy, the other movies that were they're more serious, but that's just an example. Big thing is there was no sound. Nobody couldn't hear people talk back then. They didn't have the technology. Newspapers and magazines also became very popular, and these things they shaped cultural norms, such as I could say things like it shaped the way people dress would be one. It also shaped how people lived. It just kind of gave people different ideas on how to live, how to dress, what to buy. And a big thing is it established a consumer culture. And that just means people who buy stuff. We're all consumers. You guys have bought in cell phones, you've bought in clothes. And back then, you would open up a newspaper or magazine and you would see these ads. Buy these cigarettes, buy this saw, buy this clothes. Things like that. So people would do that, and magazines kind of showed people what to buy. It also sparked fads, and fads could be the way people dress, the way people have their hair, but maybe a magazine would show an actress and how she does her hair, and all of a sudden everybody's going to be wearing her hair just like that actress. So newspapers and magazines were important in that regard. They weren't really like that before. And you guys have seen magazines today. I'm sure you've opened them up. They have lots of advertisements. There's also challenges to traditional values. So one thing is traditional religion. Remember, a lot of people were Christian during this time. And there was something that became popular called Darwin's theory. And this is the belief that humans evolved from primates, which is essentially monkeys. So a guy named Charles Darwin, he believed that first humans were more like a monkey, and this is millions and millions of years ago. And essentially over time, we gradually got bigger, we started changing, and now we're the humans we are today. You're going to learn the same thing in biology. It's what science believes in. And the Scopes trial was a famous trial. This is where a teacher from Tennessee was charged with teaching the theory of evolution. So this teacher was teaching kids that this is how humans evolved. Back then, you only used to teach the Bible. You would teach what the Bible said. But this teacher started teaching evolution. And as you guys know today, they teach evolution at all schools. It's actually mandatory to teach evolution. You're not allowed to teach religion. The role of woman also changed. There was a popular thing called flappers. This is flappers right here. That was the style. It was a type of hat that women would wear on their heads. They also wore these types of dresses and shoes. That was just the cool thing to do. And there's also the 19th Amendment. So women's suffrage. If you remember, suffrage means vote. Before the 19th Amendment, women were not allowed to vote, but now they are. So it made a big change. And also, if there was a politician that women didn't like, they could vote for a different one. So politicians have to now get women to like them, so they'll vote for them. Some of the other challenges to traditional values was there was open immigration now. You remember before, we talked about the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Emergency Quota Act. They loosened it up a little bit, so now there's more immigration. However, this caused something called the rise of the new Ku Klux Klan. And the Ku Klux Klan, if you've seen them, but they're people that wear like these little hoods on their head. Sometimes they burn crosses, but they're essentially they're racist people. That's what they are. But these are a group of people that don't like immigrants or African Americans. And there's also something called the Red Scare. And Americans were afraid communists from Russia were coming to the United States. And communists are people who believe religion should be illegal. They also believe everyone should be equal and the government should control everything. So there's still a few communist countries in the world. Some are like North Korea, Cuba. China is sort of communist. It used to be more. And I'll update this right here. Open immigration is more immigrants were coming to the U.S. All right, and the last slide is challenges traditional values again, but now we're talking about prohibition, which that's the 18th Amendment. It's banning alcohol. So for a short period of time in the United States, alcohol was illegal. If you were drinking alcohol, you'd be arrested. But however, that didn't stop people. A lot of people started smuggling alcohol, so people still brought alcohol into the U.S. And there was stores called speakeasies, and those are stores that illegally sold alcohol. I mean, the way I think about it is in Virginia, marijuana is illegal, but a lot of people are still able to buy it. They still smuggle it in. And the one thing, when they had prohibition and they banned alcohol, it actually led to an increase in organized crime. So, because remember, alcohol is illegal, so who's going to bring it into the country? It was crime. People who commit crime were going to bring alcohol in. And there was a big increase in crime when they made alcohol legal. Later on, we'll hear the 21st Amendment. They actually make alcohol legal again. One of the big reasons why is because there was so much crime when they made it illegal. If you guys have any questions, let me know.